The idea that a video about, niche transport infrastructure has been seen, I don't know what it's up to now, 800,000 times.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty insane.
That's the voice of Julian O'Shea, one of the more fascinating people I've interviewed in my lifetime, because he had designed a solar-powered tuk-tuk, was a South Australian recipient of Young Australian of the Year 2014, has his very own YouTube channel with more subscribers than I, and created an emoji that can be found on all your phones.
I made it my mission to go and get the brick symbol put into the official emoji list.
I will admit I may have pronounced his surname incorrectly during this interview, but nonetheless, God Given Talent presents the Talented Peeps podcast, and this is the audio-only experience. So the first question I really want to ask you, Julian, is why YouTube?
So I'm an educator and I, get in front of a class and can talk to a group of 20 students, 50 students, 100 students maybe. But you can't reach thousands of people, tens of thousands of people, a million people by doing it class by class. So for me, it's a chance to, really increase my reach.
Yeah, wow. And I want to know, can you please describe the feeling of when you first pressed publish on your first ever YouTube video that was about the Anzac Bickies?
Yeah, so the thing that kind of started it all for me was being in lockdown and, not being able to go and lead study tours, which is my background, or run educational events. So, I kind of wanted to tell stories in an interesting way. And yeah, I made it at home, locked down here in Melbourne, and made it a very niche topic.
This is an Anzac biscuit. They're sometimes chewy, they're sometimes crunchy, but what it can never be, legally, is called a cookie.
How did I feel pressing upload? Not particularly nervous because I didn't have much of an audience. I was going to be seen by maybe tens of people. And that was actually the result, I think.
Yeah. No, I love that attitude towards it, that you weren't letting fear, dictate you. You were just like, I'm going to press publish because not many people might watch it to begin with. But hey, over time, you might have checked out the stats since then. It's gained a lot more views than more than 10 people, obviously. So in the thousands. How does that feel now, looking back on it?
Yeah, that was something I was a bit surprised about. I'd listened to podcasts from people that were making educational content online or YouTube videos, and I don't know, something I would do is I look at their back catalog and see people improve over time. So, I knew that where you want to get to and where you start are very different places. But I don't think I realized how, as you kind of grow, your previous work gets more attention as well. So yeah, I've got, videos now that have been seen over 100,000 times that in their first 100 days had been seen less than once per day, So you're literally releasing it, but then only a year later does it start to attract attention and, get picked up by an algorithm and people know a bit more who you are. So yeah, you might have already made the work that makes you famous.
Yeah, wow. And what I noticed is that when you first pressed publish on that Anzac Bicky video, you did about 9 straight videos, about, I say, one a week. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah.
And then you went for a bit of a hiatus, and then come November 19th, I made sure I get the dates right, 2020, was when you first released the first episode of Unknown Melbourne. And obviously, when I realized the editing style from those first few videos to the Unknown Melbourne just completely shifted. And I want to know, what was the thought process behind a shift in editing, but also the thought process behind the Unknown Melbourne?
Yeah, so look, I like to tell really kind of quirky stories about interesting things that people might not know about. And that first kind of season, I guess, of 10 videos, a lot of it was COVID limitations. I wasn't allowed outside the house. So it was kind of, what can you make, talking about stories where you can use kind of, footage from online and stock footage and those types of things. So I talked about things that were available, like how doorknobs are going extinct because they're being banned in Australia and around the world. As a way to kind of talk about industrial design and inclusive design. And then, yeah, once I let out the house, suddenly my radius increased and I could tell stories about the city I live in. So I make the series called Unknown Melbourne, and it kind of tells quirky stories about obviously the city of Melbourne, but looking at a lot of design, urban planning, and just kind of modern history about interesting stories from the city. And the first one was, yeah, going and checking out the Montague Street Bridge, which was a bit famous around here. It's one of those bridges that keeps getting hit by trucks. So I wanted to kind of understand why it keeps getting hit by trucks. And yeah, the amazing thing happened when I went there to investigate. A truck smashed into it.
I'm not joking. I've just turned around and there's a vehicle that's stuck right now. Yes, I had timed my visit with an actual collision.
I'm not sure where exactly you live in Melbourne, but do you live close to that bridge? And that was the inspiration, just looking at that bridge, or the inspiration was all the newsreels over time?
Yeah, it's one of those kind of things that's I don't know, a real world meme that people talk a
Yeah.
lot about. Montague Street Bridge gets hit again. The news absolutely reports it like that. And it's one of those things, and there's a lot of them where while it exists a lot kind of in people's consciousness, people haven't really explain a video about it. I think there's a lot of things like that. And I kind of wanted to go, well, wait up. While people know of it, not that many people know about it. And I just wanted to kind of take that extra depth and dive into it and tell a quirky story.
Is that your personality, that you want to know something about something and there might not be anything on that related topic, so you decide, I'm going to talk about it myself? Is that your personality, always just wanting to know more about, you could say, the mundane things like the bridges, the crosswalks, which I'm going to talk about later, I'll ask about later. So yeah, is that your personality, just wanting to know the why behind all those things?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think where kind of YouTube suits me really well is that I've got varied interests. You know, like some people really like know, like they love their thing, you know, they're
Yeah.
really into football or V8 cars or whatever their topic is. That's awesome. But I think I've got more varied interests. So, you know, you can spend a week diving into the history of the Montague Street Bridge, or, you know, try to understand how scientists discovered the reason why wombats have square poops, you know, like these types of just very diverse topics. And it kind of is a great chance to dive into something quite niche and then communicate it and then move on to the next thing.
And your way of communicating is done well, I must say. So it is such an honor to be able to talk to you about it and the process. And so again, thank you so much for joining me.
And I want to convince you today that Australia has designed not only the best pedestrian crossing button in the world, but that this is one of the best designed things to ever come out of Australia.
Your most viewed video, and this is the video that the algorithm suggested to me, was Australia's crosswalk buttons. And I really wanted to know, what was the inspiration behind that video?
This one came from a friend actually who had, you know, we make a lot of videos together. He joined me on a trip where we went and fished O-bikes out of the lake. So, you know, he knew I had an interest in kind of urban design, and he suggested it from a kind of technical perspective. So for those that don't know, Australia's got these buttons that you press to cross the road, and they've got a pretty iconic sound. Like if you walk around the streets of Sydney or Melbourne, you'll hear them, just this kind of boop, boop, which is showing people that are blind or have vision impairment where the crosswalk is, where to wait, where to wait to press the button for the pedestrian crossing. So he suggested it from a technical point of view, and as I started to dig into it, I realized that there's you know, another side of the story, which is the kind of pop culture influence that famously this is the sound that was sampled as part of the mega best-selling hit Billie Eilish's Bad Guy. So I just thought to make a great story that it's an Australian invention. It is uniquely Australian or distinctly Australian, but people don't know that, you know, like people that are from Australia may not realize that this isn't the case everywhere in the world, because it just is such a common part of the streetscape. And then, yeah, the quirky twist about how it's a, you know, multi-Grammy award-winning song.
And the PB5 found its way into the top song of 2019, Billie Eilish's Bad Guy. Listen carefully for this sound.
I love that video because I think beforehand going into that video, I knew about the pop culture reference of Billie Eilish loving it, but then I never really understood why we have that sound, or because as an Aussie, you just cross the street without really knowing why. And the fact that there's someone like yourself out there on YouTube answering the question of why, when people might not be really thinking about why, but because that video is just so engaging of like, actually, I've always wondered that. Well, that's a good topic to talk about and understand. And then begins the rabbit hole of watching your other videos about your designs within Melbourne or other engineering designs. So yeah, it was a great story being told. Thoroughly loved it, which explains why it's got so many views. Did you expect it to go that viral?
I did not. Like, this is really niche stuff, and I think
Yeah.
it's both a challenge and an opportunity to answer questions that people didn't have. You
Mm,
know, like no one is jumping on YouTube searching, oh, what's the story of these crosswalk buttons, pedestrian crossing buttons? Like, no one is doing that. So it makes my channel kind of hard to find. But when you
mm.
do and you get prompted by it, then yeah, hopefully it hooks you in and you dive down the rabbit hole. That's absolutely what's happened. So yeah, um, look, the idea that a video about, niche transport infrastructure has been seen, I don't know what it's up to now, 800,000 times.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty insane.
We interrupt this program to give you a word from our sponsor, Pemelia Accountants. My family's business. We're all about financial solutions for you and your family. And when it comes to running your own business, we'll give you the right advice, set you up for success, and save you some tax along the way, so that you can provide comfortably for your family and, in a way, the families of your employees. So if you're in need of a new accountant, head to www.pameliaaccountants.com.au. Pamelia spelled Pamilya, or simply click the link in the description to arrange your first free consultation with us. Now, back to the program.
From what I've gathered, you definitely have a fascination in engineering. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, it's my background. So my
Yeah.
degree was in electrical and electronic engineering.
Yeah, cool. Because I wanted to ask, I was doing some background research into you because before YouTube, this actually was like, wow, the standout point for me was that you were the South Australian recipient in 2014 for Young Australian of the Year. And I was reading your bio and they were talking about directors of Engineers Without Borders Institute. And I want to know, are you still involved with them or that changed?
Yeah, so I worked for them for 5 years, so
Mhm.
heading up all of their education and research projects. So
Mm,
Engineers Without Borders, as a bit of background, does technology, engineering, and design, but with a humanitarian approach. So
mm,
rather than make things for companies, you're working in communities around the world, doing projects like water supplies, off-grid energy, telecommunications. And that was my background. So I've continued to do that type of work. So yeah, I'm still keenly involved in what's called the humanitarian engineering and design sector.
yeah. And I loved what I'm just going to read what was said in that description about you was that, you had this ambitious goal of building a movement of engineers to improve the life in some of the world's poorest countries, which explains why you were a recipient of the Young Australian of the Year back in 2014. I mean, when you got that award, I want to know about the award first. Did you know that with that ambitious goal of yours that you'd win or not be even eligible for Australian of the Year?
Yeah, like it's a pretty special recognition. There's no
Yeah.
doubt about that. It's always a bit of an interesting feeling when you're doing something collaboratively, because of course all these projects are never about one person and then
Mm,
being singled out. But it's really great. Like there has been a shift in my professional time working,
mm,
that these types of projects were pretty rare. Like when I went to university, these were never case studies. It was always about industry and like big projects and the like, rather than projects that are there explicitly to improve people's lives.
mm,
And being able to be part of that, and it actually is a movement. Like there are now,
mm.
academics and people doing this type of work as a thing. So yeah, it's really beautiful recognition, and shout out to all the various and dozens of team members that have been part of it.
Yeah. And I think from myself spectating what you're doing, and so I'm looking from the outside in, am I right in saying that with the shift to YouTube, you're still having that whole, you're talking about engineering within your videos and you're talking about just perfect design. And even though you might not be doing engineering for another country overseas, but you're at least actually opening the door for engineers that might find your videos from those poorer countries that will watch them like, how come our country is not doing that? We should incorporate that, whether it's how do we do the crosswalks or the recycle bins with the solar panels. Yeah, do you feel that you're still carrying that ambitious goal into YouTube?
Yeah, absolutely. And like they may feel really different, working
Yeah.
overseas in Cambodia on projects versus, making content on YouTube.
Mm.
But the steps between actually, to me, make a lot of sense. So what I was doing prior to the pandemic was taking groups of students and young professionals overseas to spend time on the coast in Fiji, where they're literally at the front line of climate change. You can see the beaches kind of eroding before your eyes. Taking people to India, which has just got some real amazing opportunities, but challenges as well with, these millions of young people finishing school and university and, needing employment and jobs. So how does entrepreneurship play a role in that? So that kind of was my work, like working very much in close collaboration with these places. And then, of course, the pandemic put all of that on hold. So, the ability to travel to these places couldn't happen. So I was kind of, how do I scratch that itch? How do I continue to engage in this way? And that's why my videos, like, a crosswalk button and how it features in a Billie Eilish video, may feel like a bit of kind of quirky pop culture. But what it's really about is like, what does good design look like? And what does inclusive design look like? Because these buttons are designed explicitly for people that have different abilities, people that may be vision impaired, people that are deaf or hearing impaired. And that's why they vibrate. That's why they make the sound that they do. That's their reason for existing. So being able to show kind of inclusive design, yeah, absolutely gets people thinking about these things. What is it like to live in a world which has been designed for, different people and designed for inclusivity? And yeah, it's a bit strange that YouTube is my mechanism to do that.
Yeah, cool. And when you're talking about taking people overseas, am I correct in saying that was your company, Unbound?
That's right. Yep.
Yeah.
So I set up an organization to do this, to give these opportunities to Australians, particularly university students, to travel and to, kind of collaborate with these amazing partners overseas.
And with Unbound and YouTube, I was curious, was YouTube in some way, do you believe that YouTube is an extension of Unbound?
Yeah, I'm kind of the driving force behind both of them, and I'm absolutely taking YouTube with an educational approach. So while I, absolutely make everything I do, whether it's on YouTube or TikTok, to be really kind of engaging and, for a mainstream audience, it should be fun. You should enjoy it. It should be a good time. It's also, it's educational content. It's, documentary content. It's factual. It's about the world.
And will we see any of those people that have come through that program feature in any of your YouTube videos, or at least are you encouraging them to start their own channels and educating other people?
Yeah, like this is a thing that we're looking at right now. So earlier this year, myself and another amazing educational video storyteller, a TikToker by the name of Mary McGillivray, and I are working on a project with the State Library of Victoria. And libraries are amazing institutions, and they've got all this knowledge and these amazing exhibitions, and they're great at kind of getting stories out. So we're doing a project with them, which is all about video storytelling. So we'll be doing some workshops this week, actually, where we're kind of sharing skills that I've kind of picked up along the way, that we've picked up along the way, about how to tell a story online. Whether you use those platforms like TikTok or YouTube, that's fine, but more just how to communicate effectively to a bigger audience. So it's a growing area of interest of mine. How do we encourage more people to tell the stories that matter to them, to talk about the issues that really matter to them?
Yeah, cool. And I want to kind of go back in time and understand where this storytelling trait of yours came, or this enthusiasm to storytell. How early on in your life did you first notice you had this ability or desire to storytell?
I think for me, it's come from doing a lot of travel. So while I didn't start traveling in life till later than many young Australians, obviously a global career has been a huge part of what I do. And there's just so many moments when you're sitting in a rural village in northern Vietnam and just going, this is an amazing experience. Like I really want to share this. And I did that, manually by taking other people overseas to visit these places through education programs. But, just seeing some of these remarkable projects and communities, you really want to just shout it from the rooftops. So I think that was a big motivator. And, I've done some projects that I just thought, I think other people would be interested in this. So a quirky one I did was I built a solar powered tuk-tuk, so a three-wheeled rickshaw, and drove that across Australia. And like, that's a fun story. The vehicle's amazing. And that's one that just kind of feels like it should be seen by more people. So I didn't have the skills to record that myself. So I had a friend join, and he was a videographer and put together a beautiful little documentary, and it also spread through kind of mainstream media. But that really prompted me to go, look, there are people that are interested in these things. So you're doing most of the work by doing the activity. Just do the last little bit, and capture it and share it, and then you can reach a much bigger audience.
Yeah, and which you've done so far, and like you've done such a phenomenal job since you've gone onto YouTube. And was that solar panel tuk-tuk, because obviously that it's uploaded to your channel, and there was the ABC News report. You kind of may have hinted at it, but just to clarify, like when you saw that video, that was you saying, oh yeah, more people need to know this, but thinking, actually, I don't need to outsource to other videographers. I can do this.
That's exactly right. So that one is lucky, and that one is captured because they happened to, both get media attention. So the ABC would, of course, send down their film crew to film you, zipping around. Or we had an external person, the very talented Mario, join us, Mario Gonzalez. So he captured it. But yeah, obviously, he's not there for all the projects I work on and places I visit. So if I want to tell those stories in the future, I thought, it's time to learn how to use a camera and use some editing software. Yeah.
And when you first press record on that, I'm curious, was the Anzac Bicky video the first one you recorded, edited, and published? Or was there a few other ideas that you kind of started but never fulfilled to completion?
I forget which order it worked, but I did make one around the same time that still hasn't been uploaded because I just was not happy with it. I'll go and remake that video.
Yeah.
It's the story of how I created an emoji. So, how there's emojis on your phone?
Yeah.
It turns out that anyone can submit one through the official process. So my story of getting one of them through the system. I tried filming it, it just didn't really come out. So I'll have another go because the story's interesting, but the film quality wasn't there. But I've gotten better since then.
Yeah.
The first one was the Anzac biscuit video. So for those that are listening that don't know the story, basically Anzac biscuits are a famous Australian food. They're made of oats and honey and the like. And they came about in the early 1900s and became more popular during World War I because they would last a long time. You could send them to Europe. And the government has banned, because the phrase Anzac, which stood for Anzac New Zealand Army Corps, became such a well-known phrase. They've banned the use of that phrase on anything else. You can't use it for things. So it's exploring how you can call these a biscuit, but you can't call them a cookie, and you can't use the word Anzac on anything else easily.
Yeah, and it's a great video. But I also want to know more about this emoji one, because you've kind of hinted at it. Is what can you reveal to me now, or are you going to save it all for that future video?
Mate, you can have the exclusive.
Hey.
So the short story is that emoji they kind of come from Japan, where they were used in the early days of mobile phones. And these days they're kind of controlled by a group called the Unicode Consortium, which sounds like a lot of kind of dark mystery figures that are pulling the strings on all the emoji in the world. But really what they are is about trying to make the internet more accessible and inclusive, because we all know what the Latin characters look like, what an A or a G or a T looks like, but symbols in different languages, what do they look like? How do we all agree what symbol is what? So they do that, matching up, like this is the Arabic symbol for this is the code that we'll put it in. and that includes emoji. So you can send them information and say, look, I think this should be an emoji.
Yeah.
So the story behind this one is I was in Nepal and working with a colleague, and he does a lot of building out of traditional materials, and he's invented this amazing contraption where you can take kind of earth and compress it, and make bricks out of like compressed earth rather than fired in a kiln. Just a strong earthquake-proof, beautiful, locally made, an amazing project. And we're talking how Nepal has kind of lower literacy, but full of mobile phones. There's more than one mobile phone per person in Nepal. So we thought, wouldn't it be cool to be able to message how many bricks you need, and how many to order and how many to bring up. And they use emoji a lot because it's quite symbolic. People like crosses language.
Wow.
But there was no emoji for brick. So I made it my mission to go and get the brick symbol put into the official emoji list. And if you check your phone right now, I think you'll find a brick is on there.
I'm going to check it now.
Yeah. It's under objects. I think you'll find it.
And you made it. Wow.
Yeah, I had to write I don't know what it was, like a 14-page document about why it's a valid symbol, how, it's not like geographically limited. It's not a trademark. It's not a fad. Like, it's not like people will stop using it in a year, because once it's there forever. It's not offensive. Like, there's a lot of rules you have to follow. And yeah.
It's got the 3 holes, the brick.
Yeah. So it actually looks different on each platform does it a little bit differently, but the 3-hole version is the one that I submitted. The Apple one looks a bit different. They've got 2 bricks kind of on top of each other.
Oh yeah. So I'm curious, when you submit the emoji, did you have to come up with multiple designs for each platform, or they just did it for you? So
each platform can do what they want.
Yeah.
The idea behind like Unicode is that we all agree what the symbol is. So, it is defined as a brick or a house brick. So you put forward your kind of mock design, like this is what it might look like. And then each platform has their own colors and styles and design. Like the Apple ones are pretty, iconic. So yeah, each platform can render them how they like, but the version I did, I think, looks quite a lot like a brick with 3 holes was what I put forward.
Yeah, wow. You are a fascinating man. You
Thank you, my friend.
Like the South Australian recipient of Young Australian of the Year back in 2014. You have this fantastic YouTube channel, and probably the most fascinating thing that I found from today's interview is you submitted an emoji, and we can use that emoji on our phones. Like the fact that you just gone into life with just this desire to, because you talked a lot about obviously being inclusive to everyone and allowing everyone to feel a part of the world. When it comes to Nepal, having that brick emoji and being able to communicate, whether it's I know when you talked about in the crosswalk video and talking about obviously those vision impaired, to be able to, I don't know, it's just, you're fascinating. And again, it's a huge honor to be able to talk to you. And look, what I loved when I was reading about your bio in that Young Australian of the Year, it talked about that you envisioned a world free from poverty and disadvantage. And I can definitely tell that's something you're living. You're living it through YouTube. You're living it through Unbound. You've done it through Engineers Without Borders. And you're doing it with the emojis. Like there's just so much about you that you're just living that vision. And I want to know, like, when it comes to your approach to life, like how far will you go to make this world free from poverty and disadvantage possible? How far? What's the extent that you're willing to go to?
I think when you ask it like that, it sounds like it's a real, stretch or a push, or it's hard to do. Everything you've just described are projects that I really love to do. So a lot of it is, a really fun thing to do. Spending time in rural Nepal is not that's not a hardship. It's a beautiful opportunity to see these amazing places, to work with these incredible innovators. And all of those projects that you described are a lot of fun. And I don't think I think there's a lot of interesting work and really fulfilling work when you do things that make an impact to other people. It's actually easier, like you finish the day feeling good rather than like, ugh, got to go back and do this all again tomorrow. So I think if you can find a way to align your skills, your professional work, your interests all together, then it doesn't feel so much like work.
Yeah, that's great. And I hope people watching and listening to this podcast will be inspired by what you've just said there, that you can change the world, but make it fun, or find that something that you're interested in. And I'm confident that people will be inspired by watching and listening your story. One final question that I have for you, it's what's next for Julian O'Shea?
Yeah, so I've got some fun projects on the go. I'm doing some research at the moment about sustainable vehicles. So I'm really interested in how do we cut our emissions and make cities more sustainable, more beautiful, less congested, cleaner air, more inclusive. So I'm looking a lot at electric mobility, so electric scooters, electric skateboards, and I'm designing some quirky new vehicles as well that kind of go into that mix. So, merging solar panels with electric scooters, and designing some cool things there. So I hope to, once we're allowed out of lockdown, finish those builds, because I've done a lot of the design work, but just need to get into a workshop and then take them on some adventures around the country and around the world.
I'm curious, with the bike in your background, it looks like a drawing of a bike. Is that one of the designs up on the wall?
No, that's an early patent from the design. So it's a bit of a dose of inspiration to say people have been doing this for a long time.
Yeah.
Improving on the old bicycle, and I'm going to have a go at doing it myself.
Wow, that's cool. Yeah, again, you're such a fascinating man to talk to, super inspiring. And again, it's been such an honor to talk with you. But one final thing, plug your social media, your YouTube, anything. How can people listening right now find you?
Sure. So my YouTube channel is my name, which is Julian O'Shea. But if you just type Unknown Melbourne into YouTube, that's the name of the series, which is kind of what hooks people in. So check it out, and feel free to drop me a line.
And do that. He is a fascinating man, super inspiring, so much knowledge. And I, again, genuinely enjoyed today's interview. So thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Great to chat.
There you have it, my interview with Julian O'Shea. If you enjoyed it, head on over to the YouTube video and leave a comment quoting your favorite moment. We'd love to hear from you. This has been an episode of Talented Peeps, a God-given talent production, and thank you for tuning in.